Forms are great for getting user input, but there are times when you want an input field to only allow the user to provide input that's restricted to a certain format. Could be something like some proprietary format that has to start with an S and then have some digits and then a dash and then some alphanumerics, for instance. Credit card details are another good example of this. Here we can see Amazon using this for the credit card number. So as we fill this in, you can see it splits out the various aspects of the card number. And here we can see PayPal doing something similar for the expiry date. It's expecting 2 digits and it automatically puts the slash in for us for the year. Let's go and look at how we can deal with this kind of input field using Nuxt and Vuetify. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is that I find you, and welcome along to the channel. And if you're new here, we look at all things IT related tricks and tips and tutorials like this one. So if that's of interest to you, then do make sure that you click the subscribe button. And if this video is useful to you, then do make sure that you hit that like button as well, so that this helps more people out. We are going to be using a library called Masker to help us do these masked input fields. It's on GitHub at this location, and this way you can come for the documentation, so it tells you all how to install it here and how to do masks and what you can do with it. So let's dive in. So the first thing we're going to do is exactly that. So I'm going to go back and copy that installation bit. So let's copy that and paste that so that we get that into our project over here. And then we're going to need a plugin for Nuxt to actually plug this into our application. So let's go and create a masker.ts plugin, and we need an import in here. So we need to bring that in from the library. Then we need some standard Nuxt bits and pieces to define a plugin, and then we're going to create this as a directive using that masker object that we brought in from the library, and we define that as a masker directive. So this is what enables us to have v-masker in our input fields, as we'll see shortly. So let's go and create a new page as well, just while we're here. In fact, let's copy the contact us page. Just give us a boilerplate page that we can start with. And let's get rid of all of those text fields out of there, but leave the button, and that will probably do us for now for starters. So we've just got a form with a submit button on it in this format fields page. We want to handle credit card numbers. I'm going to paste in a field. So we've got a field called credit card number, and a lot of this Vuetify form field I've gone through in a previous video, so I'll put a link to how we've handled fields with Nuxt3 and Vuetify3, which explains why we've got all of this kind of blur event going on and all of that kind of stuff. So you can check that out if you want to understand more about what's going on here. But essentially we are adding this into our data model. So we need a credit card number down in our form data. So I can get rid of name and just leave that at credit card number. Get rid of that. And then that should make that happy. Let's fix that up. So that gives us the basis of an input field. So what we need to do is add our mask to it. So we can add a v-masker, which, as you remember, we called our directive masker. So that's why it has this particular format. And we literally just specify the format that we want. So we want, for a credit card number, a hash for masker means digits, 0 to 9 only will be allowed. So we want 4 digits, a space, 4 digits, a space, 4 digits, a space, and 4 digits. So that's essentially what we are asking for with that. And masker comes with some default format types that we can use, as we'll see in a bit. So this gives us the basics of what we're looking for. So let's run this up and see what this gives us. Okay, so that is up and running. So now with our credit card number, if I bash on the keyboard on letters, I can't actually enter anything, but I can enter numbers. And as you can see, as I get to each block, it spaces out the format for me. And then when I reach the end, I literally can't enter anything more. So it's a restricted field that gives us the format for credit card numbers, nicely formatted as you see them on your credit card. So it helps the user make sure that they've got the right number by separating it into nice blocks rather than having 16 digits to try and decipher. So again, it's all about the user experience. So let's look at the data that we actually get back out of this. So as we said, we've bound this to our credit card number field in our form data. When we submit our form down here, or we do our sleep, we can do a console log form data.value. So let's put that in and see what we get. Let's send that in, and as you can see, we get our credit card number, and the value of it is actually formatted with the spaces in it, which may or may not be what you want. So in case you don't want that, you can actually do things a slightly different way to get the unformatted value. So there is an event that you can put onto the field, the masker event, and that gets fired whenever this field gets changed. So then in there we can capture the actual raw value from the data that masker is using, and we can populate that into our form data as well. So we can get rid of that being bound against the V model, save this out, come back over here, again populate our credit card number, send that in, and look at the credit card number object this time, and this time it's unformatted. So even though it's formatted in the UI, the value that we actually store down for our data usage has got the formatting stripped out of it. So that's quite useful to be able to do that, because you obviously don't necessarily want the formatting stored down into your database or passed across to your API or whatever you're doing with this particular piece of data. The formatting is really only there for the user purposes. So that's quite good to be able to do that. So let's go and look at another usage. So we saw that PayPal had used it for an expiry date, so we can do the same. So let's go and change and add a new field in for expiry date. Let's go and add a expiry date in to our data, and then let's go and fix up some of the rest of this stuff that's going on here. We need to change the mask, so we want 2 digits for the month and then a slash and then 2 digits. Let's save that, refresh that. We've now got our 2 fields, so we can ignore credit card number because we know that works. So now let's have a look at expiry date, and I can input a date. What we see is when I submit that, I've got the formatted value again. So how can we strip out the parts of that, because we don't necessarily want expiry date as one field, we want ideally 2 fields. So let's try and split those constituent parts out. So I'm going to add in a new function called split credit card date that takes the value, it splits it at the slash, and it returns an object that has a month part and a year part, and it assumes that the month part is the first part of the date. And then we're going to plug this in when we actually submit the form. So we only split it at the point when we submit the form. So right at this point here, we're going to reset the value of expiry date to the value of the field. That's our month and year. And if I submit that in, I get expiry date now with its value replaced with the separated out month and year values, which is nice if we want to pass that across to an API or store that down in our database. So that's good. But so far these masks have been pretty simplistic, really, in the grand scheme of things. We're only accepting numbers and simply formatting with additional spaces or slashes. So something that is a little bit more interesting in terms of formatting is a UK driving license number. I think driving license numbers are equally fraught with danger in the US as well, so they're different by state, so it's applicable. But as you can see here, the driving license number itself is quite a complex beast of alphanumeric and numeric values, and they have to conform to various things. So the first 5 characters are the first 5 letters of your surname. If your surname isn't 5 characters in length, then it's padded with 9s. So again, it's digits and alphanumerics. Then the next 5 numbers are a mixture of your birth date, essentially. The year is split across the first and last numbers, and your birth month is the next 2 characters. But for women, 5 is added to the second digit, and all sorts of craziness like this. So there's a whole bunch of rules here that you have to adhere to conform to a valid driving license number. So let's go and add in a field again over here for driving license number. So now what actually do we need in terms of this mask for this field? Let's have a little think about this. Let's first of all go and look at the built-in types that we get with masker. So let's jump back over here, and we can see in the documentation here that these are the default masks that we get. So hash is the one that we've been using so far, which just allows 0 to 9. There's X, which allows 0 to 9 and upper and lowercase alphanumeric. And then there's this uppercase on here. So this transforms what the user inputs into uppercase characters only. So they're allowed to use lowercase, but it will automatically transform it into uppercase. So we'll see that usage in a bit. We've also got just purely letters, lowercase or uppercase, if we use an S. So let's just copy that in for now so that we've got them to hand. So we need something. Let's go back to our example. We've got 5 characters that make up our first 5, but 4 of those could be 9s. So this is the first letter of your surname, and then we've got 4 9s after that if your surname doesn't have 5 characters in it. Then you've got the decade that you were born in. So if you were born in 1960, you would start with a 6, for instance. Then it's your birth. So let's do century, and then let's do its month, and then date of your birthday, and then it's the other part of the year. So it's the year that you were born in. So if you were born in 69, 6 would be here, 9 would be here. Then it's the first characters of your initials. So, and again, if you haven't got 2 initials, the second one of these is a 9. And then it's just some check digits. So there's three check digits that can be numbers or letters that go on the end, and that makes up your driving license number. We need a field here which is alphanumeric. So for that we can use the uppercase A because we want to automatically uppercase it. So A is a good start point for our format string. Then we need something that can accept either letters or numbers. Letters only, or the character 9. So we don't have a format string that's going to accept that. So we need to create a new one. So let's create a new one of the letter C, for instance, and let's give that its pattern. And it's going to be pretty similar to this one. So we can copy all of that, except as well as lowercase a to z and uppercase a to z, we want to allow a 9 in it. So now our format string can look like CCCC. So that gets us to that point. Then we've got a numeric, so we can use a hash for that. Then we've got this strange field where the second number, a 5, is added to it if it's a female. So it will either be a 5 or a 6, or a 1 or a 2 if you're male. So we've got a field where we can only allow 0, 1, 5 or 6 as that second digit. So we need a new pattern for that as well. So let's copy that pattern and let's create another randomly selected letter. And in here we're just going to have 0, 1, 5 or 6 as being what we allow. And we don't need to uppercase that because it's numeric only. Okay, so then in our format string we can put an M there for that digit. Then we've just got a random digit again, not a random digit, but the second part of your birth month. Then we've got the first part of your calendar month. Calendar month can either be, for the first digit of it, at least a 0, a 1 or a 2 or 3, because there's only ever 31 days maximum in a month. So we need another format string like our M that restricts. So we can do a D for day, and that's going to be 0, 1, 2 or 3. So we restrict them to only being allowed to enter 0, 1, 2 or 3 into that. Then another digit, and then finally your birth year. So that's the other half of the birth year, as we can see tying up down here. Then we've got uppercase for your first initial, and then potentially an alphanumeric or an alpha field and a 9 again if you don't have a second initial. So we can use our C specifier again. And then lastly, you've got your 3 check digits, which can be 0 to 9 and A to Z. So we need a new one for that as well. So we need another one down here of Z, which is 0 to 9, A to Z, but uppercase true. So then we can do that. In fact, I know what we'll do. We'll properly correct this so that it conforms. So like you've got lowercase a and uppercase A, we'll have a lowercase x and an uppercase x. And we'll make uppercase x do the correct thing and properly uppercase it. So we don't need Z. And then we can get rid of the Z's on there and do that as XXX. Okay, so that's what we'll do. So we've got a few things that we need to do here. So that one was okay. That one was okay, that one was okay. So we've got those 5 tokens that we need to add in, and then that is our format string. So let's go and put that in as our mask for our driving license number. And then let's go and worry about how we're going to add these tokens in. The tokens we can do back in our plugin. So let's jump back over here. And what we can do is we can import tokens from masker, and inside here we can specify a new token. We could specify C. So let's paste in our tokens, and let's just do something like that. Okay, so that gives us a token with a value of C that is that particular format that we wanted. So let's get rid of that, copy and paste in the other ones. So M and D look like that. And then we can create a new lowercase x by copying the uppercase X in the first instance. And then we can override the uppercase X and replace it essentially with a revised pattern that has uppercase in it. And it's given me lots of warnings saying that this is better written using the dot notation. So I'm going to disable dot notation for this entire file because I think that looks cleaner. So that gives us our redefined tokens so that it's recognized inside of our mask. So let's save that, jump back over here, and now I can get rid of all of this rubbish and save that. And let's jump back over to our field and see what we get. So the first digit, if I start bashing on numbers only, I can't enter anything, but I can enter, say, Smith, for instance, or if my surname is S, I can also enter 9s to pad that out for the first 5 digits. Then I can't enter any characters, bashing on the numbers. It will only allow me to enter numbers. So, and if you remember, this one is the year, so this is the year that you were born. So let's do 68, for instance. So we put a 6 in there, and then this one is the month. Remember, this one's the funny one, that's the 0, 1, 5 or 6. So I can enter a 5, I can enter a 6, I can't enter a 7. So let's go for a male. So let's say he was born in November, and let's say he was born on the 30th of 68. Then we've got initials, so we can enter anything there, and we can also enter a 9 here, but we can't enter any other numbers. So bashing on other numbers, I can only enter a 9, not an 8, 7. So that's good. And then our 3 check digits can be anything that we want. So that gives us a formatted driving license number, but there are still some issues with this. So it doesn't allow, or it does allow rather, illegal months. So for instance, these 2 here are the month, and these 2 here are the date. So I can still put in something like a 9 in there. So I can have the 19th month, and I can have like the 33rd day, and be born in 1968. So that's not perfect, but it's getting there. It's helping the user try and type in the right thing, but they can still type in invalid stuff. So can we do anything to combat that? Well, we can. Let's create another function down here and just create a simple Vuetify validation function that uses a regex that goes and validates whether or not this is a valid formatted driving license number. So this adds in some of that extra restriction. So it's restricting it to something that represents a valid date. So we can go back up to our driving license number and simply inside the rules call that function. And then if I come over here, copy this, refresh the page, come over here and paste that in, it tells me it's an invalid number. So let's change the month to the 11th and that to the 30th of 68, and straight away that now tells me that's a valid driving license number, which is great, and that's certainly along the right lines. But for instance, if I was born in 1969 and I was born on February the 30th of 1969, it's still going to allow it even though February the 30th doesn't exist. So again, it's getting there. We're nearly there, but we're not there yet. And there's a few things you could do. You could ignore this on the UI and send it to your API, send it to your database and validate it somewhere else at the back end and not worry about it on the UI. But let's go and have a look and see if we can actually fix this up on the UI. So I'm going to add in another validation function underneath valid driving license. And let's go through this. So is a valid license date. So it's basically using exactly the same regular expression, but we're using capture groups inside that regular expression to capture and tease out the dates. So the month and the date from that particular regular expression. So that's why there's these bracketed pieces. So once we've done that, we can then tease out the year, the month and the day from that regular expression. Once we've done that against what's been entered, we can parse that into a new date, and dates with JavaScript automatically correct. So if you enter the 31st of Feb, it will switch that and bump that over to the 1st of March, for instance. So we can use that to our advantage. So we know that the parsed date will have been corrected. So if we then use that as a string and compare that to a formatted string of the original input value, we can compare the two, and if the two don't match, then we know the date that was entered was essentially invalid because it was bumped over to a new date. So that's what this validation function is doing. So we can just literally run that after this one. So we can do that and let this refresh, and I will copy that. And instantly now I get driving license dates are not valid. So it's not happy with the 30th of the 2nd. And if I go 29th of 69 and some initials and some check digit, it's still not happy with the 29th because I'm in the year 69. But the year 68 is a leap year. So if I go 68, it does allow the 29th of Feb. So now we're really helping our user, making sure that they're entering stuff at the UI right at the source. We've got no server round trips. So the earlier you can do this validation and the more you can lock it down in the UI, better experience for the user. That's not to say that you shouldn't do it in your API to make sure that what's been entered is also valid, but it does make for a much better user experience. So that's all I had for this video, and if you found this useful, then do remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It does help me out, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.